We continue now at the top of Daf Yomi Gemara in Meseches Yoma. This is Yoma Daf 13a. The Gemara here is continuing with the statement of Rabbi Yochanan, halacha ke Rabbi Yossi. The halacha is like Rabbi Yossi. Again, Rabbi Yossi says that if the Kohen Gadol is replaced by somebody else, that replacement, after the first Kohen Gadol comes back, that replacement cannot serve as a Kohen Gadol, and also does not serve as Kohen Hedyot, doesn't do any of those things. And the Gemara says, "Umoder Rabbi Yossi shim avar va'avar avodas uksheira." But even Rabbi Yossi admits that if this replacement Kohen does do some kind of an avoda, the avoda is going to be kosher. In other words, he shouldn't serve in the Beis HaMikdash. He should not serve as a Kohen Gadol or a Kohen Hedyot anymore. But if he does, the avoda is going to be kosher. Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Rav. Rav Yehuda says in the name of Rav, halacha ke Rabbi Yossi. He also says the halacha is like Rabbi Yossi. Umoder Rabbi Yossi, and Rabbi Yossi admits shim meis rishon, that if the first Kohen Gadol dies, shechozer la'avodaso. So then the second Kohen Gadol will, the replacement Kohen Gadol will again become the Kohen Gadol. Gemara says, Pshita, isn't that obvious? The Gemara says, Ma'u detema havalei tzara mechaim. No, you might have thought this guy was a tzara while they were alive. In other words, they were competitors, so to speak, for the position while they were both alive, so maybe he shouldn't become the Kohen Gadol. Kamash Malon, that's what the Gemara is teaching us, that no, in this case, once the first Kohen Gadol does actually die, the second replacement goes back to being the Kohen Gadol. And we'll just take a look now at Rashi. Now, Rashi here is actually on the previous Amud. The Rashis for this daf are on the previous Amud. Shem avar v'avad. Rashi says, b'shmona begadim. What that means is, let's say this replacement Kohen Gadol serves in the 8 begadim, not in the 4 begadim, because he already was a Kohen Gadol. He serves in the 8 begadim ke Kohen Gadol, like a Kohen Gadol, avodas uksheira. Rashi says it means that b'di'evid, the avodah will be kosher. To a Kohen Gadol who, because he really is a Kohen Gadol. Ela da'amru rabbanan, just that rabbanan say, lo l'shtamish mishum eva. He shouldn't serve as Kohen Gadol because that's going to cause a certain hatred. You have two people serving as Kohen Gadol at the same time. Aval bi'arba vadai psula. But if to serve in 4 begadim is for sure a puzzle, to have a lechaser begadim, that's already considered missing begadim because this individual really is a Kohen Gadol at this point in time. Shechozer sheni la'avodaso. Then it said that the second one does serve as a Kohen Gadol if the first one dies. L'kahuna gadol, he becomes a Kohen Gadol. So the Gemara said, Pshita, that's obvious. Tamishum eva hu difsal. The only reason he's not serving as Kohen Gadol is because it's going to cause hatred. Really, he is a Kohen Gadol. So the Gemara says, no, ma'u detema mishum eva nifsal. So maybe you would think even after the first Kohen Gadol dies, he shouldn't serve because it's still a problem of eva. Af la'achar misas rishon. Even after the first one dies, that's a problem. Di'amr yishamish achara, because if you're going to say that the second Kohen Gadol serves after the first one dies, havalei tzar mechaim kisha shitzar lechaverta, that's like he's a competitor. He's a rival. Like when you have 2 wives, they're rivals to one another. Damar zem mitzap and masay yomas. We're going to say that the second one is waiting for the first one to die, so that he gets to serve. Kamash Malon to Lo Chashin. And this comes to teach us we're not worried about that. If the first Kohen Gadol dies, the second will in fact serve. The Gemara continues at the 2 dots, quoting the Mishnah. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Rabbi Yehuda says, Af isha acheres maskinin lo. We even prepare for the guy a second wife. Maybe the first wife will die. Then we're going to have a problem because the Kohen Gadol to serve on Yom Kippur has to be married. So the Gemara says, V'Rabbanan nami hachayshi l'shema. The Rabbanan also, they seem to have concerns. They're concerned that maybe the first Kohen Gadol will become apostle. So why do they have one kind of concern, but they don't have a concern about the wife? So the Gemara says, Amri loch Rabbanan, the Rabbanan will answer, Tumah shchicha. A concern about Tumah, that makes sense because Tumah is common. We're afraid the first Kohen Gadol might become Tameh, etc. Second Gadol, so we have to have a second Kohen Gadol prepared. But Misa lo shchicha, death is not common, so we don't have to be concerned that the wife of the Kohen Gadol will die. And the Gemara continues at the 2 dots, quoting the Mishnah, Amru lo, the Rabbanan say to Rabbi Yehuda, Im kain ein l'davar sof. If you're preparing a second wife, maybe the first wife will die, there's no end, maybe the second wife will die, etc. So the Gemara says, Shapir kla amri le, the Rabbi Yehuda, aren't they making a good argument to Rabbi Yehuda? The Gemara says, Rabbi Yehuda Amar Loch, Rabbi Yehuda will respond, Lemisa decha dechayshinin, we're afraid that one person will die. Lemisa detarti lo chayshinin, we're not afraid that 2 of them are going to die, so we have one replacement. Gemara says, V'Rabbanan, but according to the Rabbanan, I'ikol amecha shafilu lemisa detrain chayshinin, if you're already worried one wife will die, you might as well be worried 2 wives will die, so therefore it doesn't pay to have a replacement wife, because again, ein l'davar sof. So the Gemara says, "V'Rabbanan neim ru'inu l'nafshayu." But if the Rabbanan make that argument, they can make that argument against themselves. Why do we prepare one replacement Kohen Gadol? If you're preparing one, you should prepare 2. You should be worried that 2 of them are going to have a problem. So the Gemara says, "Amri loch Rabbanan." So for that, the Rabbanan respond to you, Kohen Gadol zorisu, that a Kohen Gadol is careful and makes sure that he doesn't become tamei, and therefore it's really in his control. So we're not that worried. Gemara says, Izarisu, but 1 second, if the Kohen Gadol is careful, Lama Maskin and Kohen Acher, why do we have any replacements at all? We should assume the first Kohen Gadol will be careful. So the Gemara says, Kevon Davdin Leitzara, since we prepare for the Kohen Gadol arrival, someone to take over, Kol Shekain the Mizdar is Tvei. It actually encourages him to become more careful, so there is a purpose of having this replacement ready. So the Gemara says, but 1 second, does it really help to prepare the second wife? Beiso Amar Achmana, the Torah says it has to be his bias. V'hach lav beisohi. This woman, he doesn't actually marry her, she's just prepared to be his wife, so she's not considered beiso. It's not his house, he doesn't live with her, so the second woman's not even going to be a solution. So the Gemara says to Mekadesh Lafine, so he does a kiddushin with her. So the Gemara says, but if he doesn't actually marry her, he does a kedushin, but he doesn't do a nisuin, he doesn't marry her, doesn't live with her, lav beiso, that's not considered beiso, so that's not a solution either. So the Gemara says, Dekanis lafine, he actually does do a nisuin, he properly marries her, and therefore the second wife will solve this problem should the first wife die. But the Gemara says in Cain, if so, havale shnei batim. Now he's got a problem because he has two wives. V'rachmano Amar, and the pasuk says v'chiper ba'ado v'yad beiso. It has to be for his house, meaning singular. V'lo ba'ad shnei batim, not two houses, not two wives. So that's not going to solve the problem either. So the Gemara says, Ta'adar megarishla, fine, he marries the replacement wife and then he divorces her. So the Gemara says, if he divorces her, hadra koshi l'duchta. Then our question goes back to the original. He's not married to her. It's back to square one. So the Gemara says, Lo tzricha, no, it's needed, the megarish lo al. He divorces her on the following condition. Diamar lo, he says to her, Areze gitech, this is your get, al menashe tamusi, if you die. So the Gemara says, that condition doesn't make any sense. V'dilma lo ma'isa, maybe she won't die. V'havale shnei batim, he'll be married to two wives again. So you're back to the same problem. So the Gemara tries another condition. Eladamar lo, rather what he says to her is as follows. Hareze gitech al menas shalo tamusi. This is your divorce document if you don't die. So the Gemara says, Ilo Misa Migrishallah. That way, if she doesn't die, so then he's going to be divorced from her, and he'll just have the original wife. Vi Misa, and if she does die, Hakaimach, we have the other wife. So the Gemara says that doesn't solve the problem either. V'dil mehi lo Misa, maybe she won't die. V'havale Gita, then it's going to be V'havale Gita dehai Gita, and then the get is going to be a good get. Umaisa Chaverta, but the other one's going to die. V'kamle below bias, now he'll have no wives. So that condition doesn't make sense either. So the Gemara tries another condition. He says, I'm giving you this divorce if one of you dies. So misaha kaimahach. If this one dies, you got the other one. Misahach ha-kaimahah. And if the other one dies, you'll have the other one. You'll always have one wife. But the Gemara says that's not going to work either. What if none of them die? Again, he's back to the problem of having two wives. And furthermore, that's not even a good get. You can't give a get on a condition. You say, I'm going to give you a get on condition that one of you dies. Because Rava says, Rava says, let's say a person says to his wife, I'm going to give you a get on condition that you never drink wine all the days of your life. So ein zeh krisos. That's not, if all the days of my life and your life rather, that's not considered a divorce. Now, kol yemei chaye ploni, if you say all the days of so-and-so's life, harei zeh krisos, that would be a little different. That would be a divorce. But the point is like this. If you make a condition that all the days of your life you can't do something, so then effectively she's married to him forever. Because he's saying to her, it's your get on condition you don't do it. If you ever do it, then it's not going to be a get. So basically she has to not do it forever, and then she's really married to him forever. That's not called krisos. You're not really cutting her off. It's the same problem over here also. You're saying to the person, on condition that both of you die, then it's going to be a get. So that means she's tied for her whole life. Until she dies, she has no get. So that's not really a get. So the Gemara tries another case. Eladamar law rather do the following condition. He says to her, this is your get if your friend does not die. So ilomisa chaverta, if the friend doesn't die, migrasha, then she's divorced. V'imisaha, and if the first wife does die, so in that case she dies, so then the get's not a get, hakaimaha, now he's married to this woman. So that will be the condition. So the Gemara says, V'dilma ma'isa chaverta. Okay, but maybe in this case, maybe the first wife will die, but palga de avoda, halfway through. Vigli milsa, then it's going to come out. And Rashi over here says, going back to the first condition suggested by the Gemara, al menasha tamusi, I'll give you a get if you die. Rashi first says, Biyom Kippur, man Yom Kippur. Anytime there's a condition if you die, obviously it means if you die on Yom Kippur. So v'im meisa bo bayom nimsa get lemafreya. The idea of this first condition was, if she dies on Yom Kippur, then really she was divorced all along, this second wife. V'en kana l'bayis echad. He only had the first first wife. V'im lo mesahi. Now, if she doesn't die, u'mesa chaveret, and the first one dies, nishara lo zos, sheina get. Then the second wife will be the wife because the get will not be a get. And Rashi over here points out, v'chol zug yizos, ein teirutz shaba yicholin lamod. This entire sugya, none of the answers really stand. Ki yesh lan shuvas rabbis. There are many refutations against the various conditions. V'eino elikim elamdeno sanu. It's just to teach us the various possible conditions and why they're problematic. V'im tomar kain yesh lahashiv kain ve'eno meshav kol shuvas sheyesh lahashiv. You could say that there's another refutation they could have had. They don't go through every refutation. What they just do is the Gemara just makes one refutation, then goes on to go to another condition until they come to a proper answer to a condition that actually works. In other words, Rashi's point is the Gemara's whole point is just to teach you every possible condition, at least one reason why it's not good, until we resolve the sugya. And we'll continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Yomi Gemara Amud Beis.